The house was unusually quiet that evening. After a draining day at work, I looked forward to a moment of peace, maybe a quick chat with Tracy before collapsing in front of the TV. I loosened my tie as I climbed the stairs, each step bringing me closer to the comfort of our bedroom. But just as I neared the door, a faint giggle caught my attention. I froze, frowning. That laugh, it wasn't Tracy's usual laugh. It was playful, flirty, almost suggestive. Then another sound, deeper, a man's voice. My stomach knotted. I reached for the doorknob, pushing it open just enough to peek inside. There she was, Tracy, sitting on the edge of our bed. She wore that silk robe I had bought her for our anniversary, thin, barely clinging to her. Her posture was relaxed, one leg draped casually over the other, but it was the phone in her hand that caught my eye. The screen faced her, but the voice coming from it was unmistakable. Scott, my best friend, laughing, grinning like he didn't have a care in the world. My chest tightened, anger swirling in my gut. I shoved the door open, my voice cracking the stillness like a whip. What the hell is going on? Tracy didn't even flinch. She turned her head slowly, her eyes meeting mine with a look that was far too calm, too collected. She smirked, as if I was the one interrupting her private moment. "Oh, come on, loser," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "He's my lover. Can you respect my privacy and get the fuck out now? I've got to show him my stretching skills." She stretched her arms overhead, the robe sliding down her shoulder just enough to reveal what little modesty was left. My head spun. Lover? I stared at her, then at the phone, my thoughts crashing into each other. This wasn't just some misunderstanding. This was deliberate, calculated. My wife, the woman I had spent a decade building a life with, was openly mocking me, flaunting her affair with my best friend right in our bedroom. "You've been cheating on me?" I managed to ask, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. My voice was strained, caught somewhere between disbelief and fury. Tracy laughed, a sharp, hollow sound that cut right through me. "Wow, you're quicker than I gave you credit for. Bingo! 10 years of playing the faithful, loving wife. What a joke." The room felt smaller, suffocating. I couldn't comprehend how casual she was about it, like she had no remorse, no guilt. My fists clenched involuntarily, trying to hold back the tide of emotions threatening to break free. "So, I'm just a stupid paycheck to you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper now, though the venom was clear. The woman I had shared my life with was standing before me, a stranger with a smile that only deepened my sense of betrayal. Tracy's eyes glinted with amusement, as though my pain was entertainment for her. "I mean, what else could you be? Did you really think I was with you because of love?" Before I could respond, Scott's voice cut through the silence from the phone. "Yeah, man? Can't handle a real woman? She's been mine all along. Get lost, loser." A wave of red-hot anger surged through me, clouding my vision. Something primal, something uncontrollable snapped inside. Without thinking, I lunged forward, grabbing Tracy's phone from her hands. Her smile faltered for the first time, confusion flickering across her face, but it was too late. I hurled the phone against the wall with all the strength I could muster. It shattered on impact, pieces of glass and plastic scattering across the room. "What the hell?" Tracy screamed, finally standing up from the bed, her carefree demeanor gone. "Are you out of your mind?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. The rage burning inside me left no room for words. I stared at her, my eyes cold, as if the woman standing before me was nothing more than a stranger. My heart pounded in my chest, my mind racing. She had lied to me, betrayed me, humiliated me, right in the home we had built together. "Get out," I said quietly, but with a finality that left no room for argument. "You belong to the streets." Her eyes widened, caught between shock and fury. "Excuse me? You can't just throw me out like some piece of shit." But I wasn't listening anymore. I grabbed her by the arm, my grip firm, and dragged her toward the door. She yanked against me, screaming, her free hand swinging wildly as she tried to break free. "Let go of me! You can't do this!" But I wasn't stopping. I didn't care about her protests, her anger, her threats. I was beyond reasoning, beyond negotiation. I dragged her to the front door, opened it, and shoved her outside. The cold air hit her immediately, and she stumbled backward, barely catching herself before turning around to face me, her eyes filled with hatred. "You're gonna regret this," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "I'll ruin you, I swear." I slammed the door in her face without a word. For a long time, I stood there, my hands trembling, my breath uneven. My heart pounded in my chest, but not from the effort of throwing her out. It was from the realization that everything I thought I knew, everything I had built over the past decade, had crumbled in a matter of minutes. As the silence of the house closed in around me, an idea began to form in my mind. Something darker, something final. What I did next would go far beyond smashing a phone. I sat in the living room, motionless, my mind replaying the scene from earlier like a broken record. Tracy's smug face, Scott's mocking voice, the way she had laughed as if my life was nothing but a joke. It was almost surreal, but the ache in my chest told me this was all too real. I glanced at the broken pieces of Tracy's phone still scattered on the floor upstairs. It felt like a metaphor for everything I'd worked for, shattered beyond repair. I couldn't sit still. I stood up abruptly, pacing back and forth. My fists clenched and unclenched as I fought against the rising tide of rage that threatened to consume me. Years of love, trust, and sacrifice had been destroyed in an instant. I had been devoted to her, to them both. Late nights, extra hours, every bit of effort I had put in was for the life we had built. And for what? To be treated like a fool. I grabbed my phone, staring at Scott's number in my contacts list. My finger hovered over the call button. I wanted to confront him, to scream, to make him explain himself. But I stopped. No, that's exactly what he wanted. What they wanted. They expected me to fall apart, to crumble into a pit of despair, to lash out blindly. But I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. Not anymore. I sank back into the couch, breathing deeply to calm myself. If I was going to do this, I needed a clear head. Anger wouldn't solve anything. It would only lead to reckless decisions. If I was going to make them pay, I needed a plan, something calculated, something that would hit them where it hurt most. First, I needed information. I dialed a number, one I had saved for emergencies. "Yeah, it's me. I need a favor," I said, keeping my voice steady. The person on the other end was a private investigator, someone I had used before when dealing with company issues. But this time it was personal. "What are we looking at?" the PI asked. "My wife," I said flatly, "and my best friend. They've been having an affair. I need everything you can dig up. I want details. How long, where, how often. I need to know every bit of dirt on both of them." There was a brief pause before he replied. "Consider it done. I'll start right away. You'll have everything within the week." I hung up, feeling the first flicker of control return to my life. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't just a victim in their sick game. I could fight back, and I would. Next, I opened my banking app and began reviewing our joint accounts. Over the years, I had saved meticulously, building a safety net for us in case of emergencies. Tracy had access to it, of course, but she had never been involved in managing the finances. She probably didn't even know how much was in there. Within minutes, I had transferred all the funds into a private account. Tracy wasn't going to spend another dime of my money. I then canceled the credit cards she used, the ones I had been paying off month after month. She would wake up tomorrow to find them declined. I made sure to redirect the bills as well, ensuring that any automatic payments she had set up would fail. She wasn't going to enjoy the comfort of my hard work anymore. For the next hour, I sat in front of my computer, going through our shared life. I pulled up old photos, emails, and messages. Each image of us smiling felt like a punch to the gut, but I needed to sift through everything. I forwarded anything that might be useful. Evidence of her infidelity, suspicious messages, locations she had visited without explanation, to the PI. The more I dug, the more I found. Late-night dinners she claimed were with friends, weekends when she needed space. It was all there, hidden in plain sight. How had I missed it? My phone buzzed with a notification, an email from our joint lawyer. I had already filed the initial paperwork for the divorce, citing infidelity. It was going to be a clean break, but not without consequences. Tracy was about to lose everything. The house, the money, Any claim to my future earnings all gone. I made sure to attach a note to the lawyer, explaining that the PI would soon deliver evidence to support the claim. With a solid case, I knew she wouldn't have a leg to stand on in court. I sat back, feeling the weight of my actions slowly settle in. But there was no remorse, no second-guessing. Every step I took was deliberate, calculated, and necessary. They thought I'd break down, that I'd be easy to manipulate. They thought they could toss me aside without consequence. They were wrong. A message from the PI flashed on my phone screen. Found something. Hotel reservations. More calls. 2 years worth of proof. I'll compile it all and send the details soon. 2 years. My mind reeled at the thought. They had been carrying on behind my back for 2 years, and I had been none the wiser. But now I had the proof I needed, and soon the rest of the world would know too. Tracy and Scott were about to lose everything they thought they'd gained. Their public image, their friends, their comfort, it was all going to burn. For the first time that night, I allowed myself to smile. Not a wide grin, just a small, satisfied smirk. This wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. But the first move was mine. The morning light filtered through the blinds, but I hadn't slept. After everything that happened last night, there was no way I could focus on anything else. I had already emailed my boss, saying I needed the day off for personal reasons. Sitting at the kitchen table, my laptop open in front of me, I scrolled through the list of expenses in our joint account. There was payments to hotels, late-night charges at restaurants I'd never heard of. It made me sick to think about how many times I had asked Tracy about those charges, and she had brushed them off with some excuse. Oh, that's just for the girls' night out. Or, I needed some time to myself. She had time to herself, all right. Time with him. I tapped my fingers on the table, trying to stay calm. The PI was already working on getting me more information, but I couldn't just sit here and wait. I had to do something. I pulled out my phone and made a call. Hey, this is John. The voice on the other end was gruff, but I had worked with him before. He was a private investigator, the kind who could dig up anything on anyone if the money was right. John, I need you to look into something. I send you some files about my wife, Tracy. John's tone changed immediately. All right, I'll get to work. Give me everything you've got, dates, names, anything. I'll track her movements and see what I can dig up. I'll send you what I have. I hung up and exhaled, my fingers already typing out an email with all the details I could remember. Dates when Tracy was out of town, the hotel names I'd seen in the account statements, and the time she claimed to be catching up with old friends. Every line now stood out like a flashing red light. While waiting for John's report, I had to keep moving. I logged into our joint accounts again, this time to freeze them. Tracy wasn't going to spend another penny of my hard-earned money. I transferred all my savings into a private account that she had no access to. Her credit cards, which I had been paying off religiously, were next. One by one, I canceled them. She wouldn't notice it right away, but soon enough, when she tried to pay for her next secret rendezvous, the decline would hit her like a brick. I stared at the screen, the feeling of betrayal still fresh, but my anger was simmering now, controlled. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was planning. I had to be smart. My phone buzzed. John again. I found some things already. Your wife's been seeing him for 2 years at least. Got records of them meeting up at hotels. Weekend trips they told you were solo, and plenty of late-night calls. I'm still digging, but this is already ugly. 2 years. I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles turned white. I want everything, I said through gritted teeth. Every hotel, every call, every meeting. I want to bury them both. You'll have it. Give me a few more days. I ended the call and leaned back in my chair, trying to steady my breathing. 2 years. All that time, while I was busting my ass at work, trying to build something for us, they had been sneaking around behind my back. The more I thought about it, the more my rage threatened to boil over. But I couldn't afford to lose control now. I wasn't done yet. I took another deep breath and started thinking about Scott. He had been my best friend since college. We'd been through everything together. Late night cramming for exams, celebrating each other's successes, helping each other through the rough patches. But all that time, had he been looking at Tracy like that? Had he been waiting for the chance to stab me in the back? I had trusted him like a brother, and this was how he repaid me. I opened up my laptop again and began digging into Scott's social media. He was careful, of course. There were no pictures of him with Tracy. But there were other things. Check-ins at the same cities Tracy had visited, even though he had never mentioned those trips to me. Pictures of him looking suspiciously happy on weekends when Tracy was visiting family. And then I found it, a selfie he'd posted from a hotel room. Nothing unusual, except for the reflection in the window behind him. It was faint, but I could see a figure, a woman, her face turned away, but the hair was unmistakable. Tracy. I saved the image, my heart pounding. This was it, the proof I needed. I quickly sent the photo to John, adding it to the growing mountain of evidence. It wasn't just about proving the affair anymore. It was about making sure they paid for what they had done. I couldn't help but imagine the look on their faces when everything came crashing down. Tracy, suddenly cut off from the life she had enjoyed on my dime, scrambling to explain herself to her friends and family. Scott, losing the respect of everyone who knew us, his reputation in shreds. They thought they could betray me and get away with it. They thought I would be too weak to fight back. But they were wrong. As the day dragged on, I made more preparations. I contacted my lawyer and started the paperwork for divorce. Infidelity was grounds for a clean break in this state, and I was going to make sure Tracy walked away with nothing. She could have Scott for all I cared, but she wouldn't have the life I had built. The pieces were falling into place. I had frozen her access to money, gathered evidence, and started the legal process. All that was left was to watch as their lives unraveled, just like they had unraveled mine. And I wasn't done yet. This was only the beginning. Scott always had a taste for the high life. Expensive suits, luxury cars, lavish dinners. He acted like he had it all figured out, but I knew better. Scott was reckless with money, always one bad decision away from financial ruin. And I was going to make sure that decision came sooner than he expected. I had spent the past week quietly gathering information, not just about Tracy's betrayal, but about Scott's career. He worked in finance, a high-pressure world where one misstep could ruin you. That was where I planned to strike. I knew his habits too well, his arrogance, his overconfidence. It was only a matter of time before it all caught up to him. All I had to do was give it a little push. I called John again. "I need some more help," I said. "What's the target?" His voice was all business now. "Scott. He works in finance. I want you to dig into his records, anything that smells off. There's something there. I just need you to find it." "Got it," John replied without hesitation. "I'll look into it, but it'll cost extra. Financial crimes are trickier." "Money's not an issue," I said coldly. "I want him destroyed." A few days later, John called back. "I found something," he said, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. "Scott's been playing fast and loose with company funds. There's evidence of insider trading and some suspicious offshore accounts. It's bad, he's been covering it up, but not well enough." Perfect. I could already picture the look on Scott's face when everything came crashing down. "Send me the details," I told John. Within hours, I had everything I needed. Emails, financial statements, proof of his involvement in fraudulent schemes. Scott wasn't just cheating me, he was cheating the entire system. I didn't waste any time. I carefully compiled the evidence and sent it anonymously to the authorities and a few key people at his firm. I didn't have to say much. The evidence spoke for itself. It wasn't long before the fallout began. The next morning, I got a text from a mutual friend, Tom, who worked at the same company as Scott. "Dude, did you hear what happened to Scott? Some serious shit is going down. The feds are involved." I couldn't help but smile. "No, what's up?" "He got pulled out of a meeting this morning. Word is they found something sketchy in his accounts. They're saying fraud, insider trading, maybe even money laundering. It's a mess." "Damn," I replied, feigning surprise. "That's insane. Let me know what happens." The news spread like wildfire. By the end of the day, Scott had been fired. His reputation in the industry was shattered, and an investigation was underway. I could almost hear the panic in his voice when he tried to call me later that night. He probably thought I'd bail him out, maybe offer some advice or sympathy. But I wasn't interested in hearing his excuses. I blocked his number without a second thought. A few days later, Tom called me again. "Scott's in deep shit, man. They're saying he could face criminal charges. And he's broke. You know how he always lived like a king? Turns out he had a ton of debt. Credit cards maxed out, loans everywhere. The guy's screwed." "That's rough," I said, though my voice carried none of the sympathy I would have once had. Inside, I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. As I hung up, I couldn't help but reflect on how quickly Scott's life had spiraled out of control. Just days ago, he had been sitting comfortably, thinking he had everything: my wife, his job, his carefree lifestyle. Now it was all gone. He had lost his career, his reputation, and soon his freedom. But the best part was that he had no idea I was the one behind it. He probably thought it was bad luck, a slip-up that got him caught. He had always underestimated me, always assumed I was the weaker one. It made watching his downfall that much sweeter. A week passed, and I heard nothing from Scott directly, though I kept tabs on him through mutual acquaintances. He was scrambling, trying to sell off whatever assets he had left: his car, some expensive watches, anything to keep afloat. But it wasn't enough. The authorities were closing in, and his debts were piling up faster than he could handle. It was exactly what he deserved. One night, I received an unexpected knock on my door. I opened it to find Scott standing there, looking disheveled and broken. His usually pristine suit was wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked like a man who had lost everything. "Man, I need your help," he said, his voice shaking. "I don't know who else to turn to. They're coming after me, and I'm screwed. You're the only person I can trust." The irony of the situation hit me like a wave. He trusted me? After everything he had done, he had the nerve to stand on my doorstep, asking for help. I wanted to laugh in his face, but I kept my composure. I wasn't done with him yet. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Why would I help you?" I asked, my voice cold and detached. Scott looked desperate, his eyes wide with fear. "Look, I screwed up. I know I did. But we've been through so much together: college, work, everything. You're like a brother to me, man. Please, I don't have anyone else." I let the silence hang between us for a moment, watching as he squirmed. Finally, I spoke. "You're right, Scott. We were like brothers. But you threw that away the second you went after Tracy. You betrayed me. And now, you're paying the price." His face fell as the realization dawned on him. You did this?" I smiled, the cold satisfaction finally bubbling to the surface. "Consider it justice." I slammed the door in his face, leaving him standing there, broken and alone. As I walked away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. This was only the beginning of his fall, and there was no one left to save him. Tracy was oblivious. While Scott's world was crumbling, she still lived in her bubble of self-righteousness, confident she had everything under control. She had no idea what was coming. As far as she knew, I was out of the picture, and she had won. But in reality, her entire life was teetering on the edge, and I was about to push it over. I had waited for the right moment. While she pranced around thinking she was untouchable, I was gathering everything I needed to ruin her. The private investigator had sent me a detailed report: dates, times, places. Every lie Tracy had told me was now documented. With the evidence in hand, I filed for divorce, citing not just infidelity, but emotional abuse. The day the papers were served, I made sure it was at her workplace. I wanted her to feel the humiliation. I knew Tracy. Her image meant everything to her. She loved being seen as the perfect wife, the successful woman with the perfect life. I was about to shatter that illusion. I waited for her to come home that evening. It was almost comical how quickly her smug attitude turned to shock as she walked through the door. The divorce papers lay on the kitchen table, along with copies of the evidence: hotel receipts, photos, messages between her and Scott. She picked up the papers, her face turning pale. "What the hell is this?" she snapped, but her voice lacked its usual confidence. "You know exactly what it is," I said, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. "It's over, Tracy. I'm done playing the fool." Her eyes scanned the documents, and when she saw the evidence, her hands trembled. You can't do this. You have no right." I raised an eyebrow. "No right? You're the one who destroyed this marriage. You cheated on me for years. You lied to my face again and again. And now, you think I'm just going to let you walk away from it?" She threw the papers onto the floor, her face twisted in anger. "I'll fight this in court. You can't just take everything." I couldn't help but laugh. "You really think you're in a position to fight? The court will grant me everything. The house, the savings, even the dog. You get nothing, Tracy. You earned this. Her bravado crumbled, and for the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. You can't do this to me, she whispered, her voice shaky. You can't ruin my life like this. I stepped closer, looking her dead in the eyes. You ruined your own life. I'm just making sure you face the consequences. Over the next few weeks, everything moved quickly. The court was swift in its ruling. Infidelity was a clear ground for divorce in our state, and with the evidence I had, there wasn't much Tracy could do. She lost the house, her access to our savings, and even the custody of our dog. The one thing she had left was her pride, but even that was about to be torn apart. But I wasn't done with her yet. I wasn't going to just let her walk away with a slap on the wrist. She had humiliated me, treated me like a fool, and now it was her turn to feel the sting of betrayal. I made sure to leak the details of her affair to everyone in our social circle. It didn't take long for the whispers to start. Friends, family, colleagues, everyone knew the truth about Tracy. They knew she had cheated on me with my best friend, and they knew just how coldly she had treated me in the process. The first sign of her downfall came when her phone started buzzing nonstop. One by one, friends began cutting ties with her. They didn't want to associate with someone who had betrayed their spouse so publicly, so heartlessly. At first, she tried to brush it off, telling herself that they were just jealous or overreacting. But as the days went by, it became clear she was being ostracized. One evening, she showed up at the house. Her face was a mix of desperation and anger. She was no longer the confident, self-assured woman who had mocked me just days ago. You told everyone, didn't you? She demanded, her voice trembling. I didn't bother denying it. They deserved to know the truth. She stepped closer, her hands clenched into fists. You ruined my life, you bastard. No, Tracy, I said calmly. You ruined your life. I just made sure everyone else saw who you really are. She stared at me, her chest heaving with frustration. But there was nothing she could do. She had lost everything, and she knew it. A week later, she came to house, bring her things, and moved out, heading to her parents' house. They weren't exactly thrilled to take her in, especially after kicked her out. I had made sure to send them the same evidence I had sent to court. They were ashamed of her, and though they agreed to give her a place to stay, it was clear that Tracy was no longer the golden child in their eyes. Meanwhile, her job was hanging by a thread. Word had spread to her office, and her superiors weren't exactly happy to have their company's name associated with a scandal. She was put on leave, pending a review of her conduct. It was only a matter of time before she lost that too. The last time I saw Tracy, she looked like a shadow of the woman she used to be. Gone was the arrogance, the smug smile. She was broken, defeated. As she packed her car with the last of her things, she glanced at me one final time, her eyes filled with bitterness. I hope you're happy, she spat. I am, I said, and I meant it. I'm finally free. And with that, she drove off, leaving behind the life she had destroyed. Tracy's bubble had burst, and now she had nothing. As for me, I finally had peace. The storm of betrayal was over, and I was free to rebuild my life, without her lies. With Tracy and Scott's lives in tatters, I felt a sense of closure, but not the peace I thought would follow. There was one more thing left to do, one final act to seal everything. I had carefully unraveled their lives, piece by piece, leaving nothing but wreckage in my wake. But I wanted Tracy to know. I wanted her to understand exactly how and why she ended up where she was, how I had been the architect of her ruin. I spent hours drafting the letter. Every word, every sentence was chosen with deliberate care. I wasn't looking for her forgiveness or even her anger. I wanted her to know the cold, hard truth. I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices, to understand that I hadn't just survived her betrayal. I had thrived because of it. I sat at the kitchen table, my fingers hovering over the keyboard before I finally began typing. Tracy, I've had a lot of time to think since the day I threw you out. Time to process everything you did, everything you and Scott thought you were getting away with. You were careful, weren't you? Careful enough to think I'd never figure it out. Careful enough to keep your lies and your little affair going for years. But here's the thing, Tracy. I was careful too. I know about every hotel room, every secret weekend getaway. I know about the nights I was working late while you were busy with him. I know about the video calls, the text messages, the whispered phone calls when you thought I was asleep. Every single betrayal. I have it all. I hired a private investigator. He followed you for months, documented everything. I have photos, receipts, phone records. I've seen you with Scott. I've seen the way you looked at him, the way you laughed with him. I even know about the weekend you two spent together while I was away on that business trip last year. You remember that one, right? When you told me you were visiting your sick friend. I know all of it. You played the part of the perfect wife for 10 years. But I played the part of the fool for too long. I decided it was time to stop. You probably wonder why everything fell apart so quickly. Why Scott lost his job. Why your friends turned their backs on you. That was me. I orchestrated every part of your downfall. I sent the anonymous tip to Scott's firm, exposing his fraud and shady financial dealings. I made sure he was investigated, and I watched as he lost his career, his reputation, and soon his freedom. Your friends? They're not the type to stick around after a scandal like this, are they? I made sure they knew everything. They saw the pictures, read the messages, and saw the truth about who you really are. You've been ostracized because that's what you deserve. But it doesn't end there. You see, Tracy, you didn't just betray me. You mocked me. You insulted the life we built together and treated me like nothing more than a paycheck, a stepping stone for your own selfishness. And that's where you really messed up, because now you've lost everything. The house, the savings, the dog, you'll never have them back. You don't have friends anymore. Your parents are ashamed of you, and the job you're barely holding on to? It's only a matter of time before that's gone too. But there's something else you should know. You didn't destroy me. Not even close. In fact, I've never felt more alive. You thought I'd crumble when I found out. You thought I'd beg you to stay, to work things out, to forgive you. But that's not who I am. You gave me the chance to see things clearly, to understand that I deserve better than you. I deserve honesty, loyalty, and respect, things you could never give me. You're probably sitting there, reading this, wondering what comes next. Maybe you're angry, maybe you're scared. But here's the truth, Tracy. I don't care. I don't care what you think or how you feel. I don't care about the life you've been forced into now. You're alone, and you'll stay that way. Scott? He's going to jail. And you? Well, you'll have to live with the choices you made. At the end of the day, this isn't just about revenge. It's about starting over. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I've only just begun living, Tracy, and it's a life you'll never be a part of. Enjoy what's left of yours. David, I folded the letter carefully, placed it in an envelope, and addressed it to her parents' house. I didn't need to send it, but I wanted her to know. I wanted her to read it and feel the full weight of her actions. It wasn't enough to destroy her life. I needed her to understand why it had been destroyed. The next day, I dropped the letter into the mailbox. I imagined her reaction as she opened it, her hands trembling, her eyes scanning over the words. I wondered if she would cry, or she would burn it out of anger. Either way, it didn't matter. The damage was done, and there was no going back. A few days later, I received a text from her. I didn't bother opening it. I deleted it without reading the words. Tracy didn't matter anymore. She was part of a past life that no longer had a place in my world. As I sat in my now empty house, a strange calm washed over me. The storm had passed, and I had come out the other side stronger, more focused. I had lost 10 years of my life to Tracy's lies, but I wasn't going to lose a second more. The final blow had been delivered, and with it, I was finally free. Months drifted by like a quiet breeze, carrying with them the debris of the life I'd left behind. At first, it was strange, coming home to an empty house, having no one to answer to but myself. There were moments when the silence felt oppressive, when I would catch myself reaching for my phone to text Tracy, only to remember she was long gone. But with each passing day, the weight of the betrayal lifted and the bitterness faded. What replaced it was something unexpected: peace. The first big step was selling the house. It held too many memories, and I wanted a fresh start. Walking through the empty rooms one last time, I felt no attachment, only a sense of finality. This was where I had lived a lie for years, where I had built a life with someone who had never truly been there with me. But now, it was just a shell, a place I no longer needed to call home. I moved to a new city, a place where no one knew me, where I could shed the skin of my former life and start fresh. It wasn't easy at first, finding my footing in a new environment, but it was exactly what I needed. The city buzzed with energy, and I immersed myself in it. I started a new job, something I actually enjoyed. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was working just to survive or support someone else's needs. I was working for me, and it felt good. But the biggest surprise came when I decided to start dating again. At first, it felt foreign, putting myself out there, meeting new people. The memories of Tracy were still fresh, and I wondered if I could ever truly trust someone again. Yet, with each date, I realized something important. Not every woman was Tracy. Not every relationship was doomed to end in betrayal. I met someone. Her name was Lindsay. We clicked almost instantly. There was no game, no hidden agendas. She was kind, funny, and most importantly, honest. Our conversations flowed naturally, and being with her didn't feel like a performance the way it had with Tracy. There was a comfort in her presence that I hadn't known I was missing. We started seeing each other more frequently, and slowly, I began to realize that there was life after betrayal. There was hope after heartbreak. As my life moved forward, I couldn't help but check in on Tracy and Scott. Not out of obsession, but out of a sense of poetic justice. It didn't take much to find out what had become of them. Our mutual friends, or at least the few that were still willing to speak to her, made sure to keep me updated. Tracy was a wreck. She had lost her job shortly after the affair became public knowledge. Her reputation had been tarnished, not just with our friends, but in her professional life as well. No one wanted to be associated with someone who had such a messy public scandal hanging over their head. Her parents had taken her in, reluctantly, but even they weren't thrilled about it. From what I heard, they were ashamed of her, the golden child who had fallen from grace. She tried to rebuild her life, but without a stable job or support from her friends, it was a losing battle. Every time she managed to get back on her feet, the weight of her own actions pulled her back down. And the worst part for her, I imagine, was the isolation. Tracy had always thrived on social attention, being liked, being admired. Now, she had none of that. She was living in her own personal hell, and it was all of her own making. As for Scott, his fall had been even more catastrophic. The investigation into his financial dealings had uncovered years of shady practices. Fraud, insider trading, the works. His career in finance was obliterated, and he was facing multiple lawsuits. His once comfortable life was now consumed by legal battles, mounting debts, and the looming threat of jail time. The man who had smugly mocked me on that video call was now scrambling to keep his life from falling apart. And the best part? No one was coming to save him. He had no allies left, no friends to turn to. Just like Tracy, he was alone. I didn't take joy in their suffering, but I couldn't deny the satisfaction that came with knowing they were facing the consequences of their choices. It was ironic, really. They had thought they could betray me and get away with it, that they could humiliate me and continue on with their lives as if nothing had happened. But life has a way of balancing the scales, and now they were crumbling under the weight of their own actions. And me? I was free. Free from their lies, their betrayal, their toxicity. I had come out stronger. The revenge wasn't in their suffering. It was in my survival, in my ability to move on and rebuild my life. I was no longer defined by what they had done to me. I was defined by how I had chosen to respond, by the strength I had found in the aftermath. The ultimate victory wasn't in watching them fall. It was in knowing that after everything they had put me through, I was still standing, still thriving. I had taken control of my life again, and I had found peace in the process. As the months turned into a year, I stood on my balcony in the new city, looking out at the skyline. Lindsay came up behind me, wrapping her arms around my waist. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "Nothing," I said, smiling. "Just the future." And for the first time in a long time, the future didn't seem uncertain or filled with dread. It felt full of possibility. The weight of betrayal had lifted, and I was free to live the life I had always deserved.